Just before the resurrected Lord departs from his disciples for the last time, he says to them that he will be sending them the Parakletos in Greek. Sometimes English translators have just given up and just translated it as the Paraclete, but that doesn't help us who speak English very much. Parakletos can be translated in a number of ways. Jesus does go on to say that this Parakletos will be the Holy Spirit. And the translation that Benita just read has this particular word in Greek translated as the advocate. And there is a way in which that's true. I think that's a good translation of the word. The Holy Spirit is an advocate, but that might be too legal sounding a term. The Holy Spirit does defend us sometimes, but that's not all the Holy Spirit does. Some other translations use the word counselor, and I particularly like those translations because I think that that gets at the heart of what the Holy Spirit does. She is a guide and a friend. She is in many ways a counselor. And the way in which she's a counselor is that she doesn't tell us what to do, but she works in us so that we discover within ourselves what we need to do, which is what a good counselor does. Jesus also says, not only am I sending you this Parakletos, this counselor, and incidentally, Parakletos directly from the Greek means the one who stands with you. So that would be good to keep in mind as I'm talking about the Spirit. She is the one who stands with us through everything. And then Jesus says, somewhat enigmatically, I'm going to leave you my peace, but don't be deceived. It's not the kind of peace the world gives. I'm giving you my peace. Well, what is the peace the world gives? Often it's economic security or health, or maybe it's lots of things that give us a certain amount of comfort. But we all know that those are sometimes transitory. We may experience them now. Some people experience very little of them ever, and we might have those things snatched away at any minute. So the peace the world gives isn't very lasting. And Jesus says, the peace I'm leaving is my peace. And the reason I wanted to have us say together that little hymn that will be sung at the later service is because I think that encapsulates wonderfully the peace of God. It starts out, and we of course didn't have the advantage of singing it, but it starts out with a rather lilting melody that kind of draws us in to this nostalgic picture of these simple fishermen fishing in the Sea of Galilee. And then it hits us right between the eyes that when Jesus comes into their lives, everything changes. And their life is not what the world would call peaceful. John dies homeless in Patmos. Peter is crucified upside down. And yet it ends, the peace of God, it is no peace, but strife closed in the sod. But pray for one thing, the marvelous peace of God. So what is this peace? I think it's the peace that comes to us as we really live into our discipleship, but we can't understand this peace without understanding the demands of discipleship. Jesus calls us into a relationship in which we are to be responsive in the world. It isn't enough to have faith. We need to put our faith into practice. It isn't enough to believe the right things. We need to be doing the right things on the basis of our belief. Being a disciple of Jesus makes great demands, but it also brings wonderful rewards. As we extend ourselves to be Christ's ambassadors in the world, we find more and more our deepest, truest selves. We find often our deepest gratifications. We've been reading in this Eastertide, almost every week, a passage from the book of Acts. And the book of Acts is important because it documents some of what went on in the earliest church and how this very small group of seemingly inept men and women managed over a period of several decades to change the Roman Empire. And they did it not on the basis of what they believed, but on the basis of how they behaved. Like Jesus, they loved others self-sacrificially. To the degree that we can love others self-sacrificially, we will experience this marvelous peace of God. Often, that calls us into some very difficult situations. So the peace we're talking about is not the cessation of war or even internal war. It isn't the cessation of bad things happening to us. It isn't some kind of guarantee. This is why I'm glad that none of the translations translate Parakletos as guardian angel. Because even though there is a sense in which the Parakletos, the Spirit, is a guardian angel, it doesn't guard us from all of the vagaries of this life. She instead invites us to really live into a Christian calling in which we sometimes have to say things that are difficult for other people to hear and take stands that may alienate ourselves even from friends. That final phrase of the hymn, "Pray for but one thing, the marvelous peace of God," reminds us that walking with the Parakletos, walking with this one who is always beside us, is in fact involved in prayer. But we'd be wrong to think that prayer is just our pouring our own thoughts out to God or making our needs more known to God, or even our cerebral involvements with God, or even the lack of those in perhaps the deepest prayers, which are contemplative prayers. Prayer is a two-way street. God is often forgotten as we talk about prayer. We think so much about what we're doing. In fact, God is an intimate partner in prayer. Because I was doing confirmation in Leesburg, Virginia last Sunday, I didn't get a chance to hear Patty Parsley's very excellent sermon. I know it's excellent because I did listen to it during the week. And twice in that, she says that God acts and invites us to react or to be involved. And particularly, she was doing this in the context of our need to be responsive to God in creation, to be working for the upbuilding of our world. And she acknowledges, as many of our scientists do, that we have already gone beyond the tipping point, so that many people feel that there's no sense in doing anything about global warming because we can never turn the clock back. People get discouraged because the job seems so great. And I was glad that she encouraged us all to be more proactive in doing things that will both preserve our environment but also assist in helping to slow down global warming. Examples fill the news every single day now of weather catastrophes. I'm old enough to remember that this isn't the way it used to be. There were always tornadoes in the south and the southeast at this time of year, but never on a daily basis. Now we have calamities on a daily basis all over the world and in this country. So we are living in a new phenomenon, and we need to be more proactive, really be making some sacrifices. Sacrifice lies at the very heart of being a disciple. It's not possible to be Jesus' disciple without making some personal sacrifices so that the will of God might be understood and acted on. And what is true of our world in general is also true of our world socially. I mean, here we are in the city of Baltimore, still trying to recover from news that we've had a very corrupt administration again. We've had corrupt administrations for years in this city. We are living every day with corruption. We have a very corrupt government administration in Washington, possibly the most corrupt that we have ever had, and it is endangering our very democracy. The world needs people to stand up and speak out and act out and to be Christians in their lives. Desperately, we need to have persons who will put their life on the line. This is what the early church did and why it was so very dramatic and why it made such a difference. People were really living into their faith, speaking out and acting out, even in some cases, though it meant their life was at stake. If we are to experience that peace of God, which is a marvelous peace, which comes to those who are truly doing all they can do and then committing the rest over to God, that is a kind of peace the world cannot give. A peace that we might call peace of mind, but that somehow doesn't do quite justice to the depth of that peace, which is a peace which will see us through as that Parakletos, that one who stands beside us, will always be there to guide us and strengthen us. Amen.